What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Feeling Blue podcast. We got the full panel here today, minus Aaron. Obviously, he could not join us today, but we do have recurring guest, special guest, Zain Belt Guy in the house. Zain, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us. I appreciate the time, my man.
No, I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm just ready to talk Giants.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a great day to talk Giants, kicking off our offseason here. And like I said, all of the links to our channels are in the description down below. So obviously hit that thumbs up, subscribe to everyone's channel in the description down below. You can hear a bunch of great Giants content. What up to Chris? I believe this is the first live stream that we're doing under your new brand name, your new logo. You can see down here as well. Chris and Rodney, how are you guys doing?
Good. Similar to Zain, I can't wait to talk some New York Giants ball. Got some good discussions today, so can't complain, man.
Rodney, what's up, man? How are you? Always nice to see you. I think you're on mute.
Gentlemen, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Zain, first time meeting you. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. How are you?
Good. Let's get it going.
We got a great squad here. We got some great topics for you guys. We're going to be delving into here. We're going to be getting into everything here today. We're going to talk about Saquon, the number 6 pick in terms of wide receiver options. We'll be talking about it all. I want to shout out the chat. Lane talking about how we're feeling about the Giants right now. Obviously, we can answer this question so many different ways, and we'll be talking about all of this tonight and our overall feelings of the Giants heading into this offseason. We got Coach Ed in the house. We appreciate you. Peace and blessings, Coach. Thank you so much for stopping by. Definitely appreciate you. Always checking out the stream and supporting us, and telling Zain that beard is absolutely fire. That is absolutely right. Let's get into it, man. Honestly, let's get into it. Absolutely. I'm excited, man. Let's start off with the defensive coordinator search. We'll go round robin here because we do have the full panel here. Zain, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, I know on your X account, all the content that you do, whatever platform it may be on, we're talking about defensive coordinators here. Obviously, the Ravens with the Seattle Seahawks just hiring the, I guess, ex-Ravens defensive coordinator now, Mike Macdonald, as their head coach. There is a little bit of not uncertainty, but it's sort of like, what do the Ravens do now in terms of maybe promoting Denard Wilson to their sort of defensive coordinator role? And obviously the Giants are heavily involved with Denard Wilson. I believe speaking to him twice in one day, if I'm not mistaken, with the most recent reports. Where are you sort of at here with this defensive coordinator search? And honestly, we've already talked about this on the channel, but I'm enlightened. I want to get your thoughts on the whole debacle that was the Wink Martindale fallout. So definitely want to hear your opinions on that, man.
Yeah, so as far as the whole DC thing, right, this is a little bit of a wrench. Now with Mike Macdonald going to Seattle, who says he's not taking Denard Wilson with him, right? Lateral or not, he can absolutely go join another staff and move on to Seattle as well. There shouldn't be an assumption that the staff in Seattle is going to remain the same with a new head coach. So that's also one possibility. So Denard Wilson's going to have options, right? He's going to have the option to move with his DC. He's going to have the option of potentially being promoted within Baltimore's franchise. And then he's got suitors out there. We're not the only ones, right? There's other people who are also after Denard Wilson. So it'll be really interesting. He's a hot commodity. He's a hot topic. I mean, I'd be more than happy to sign him. I think it would make things easier schematically, where the Giants won't have to make that many changes in that case. So that's a big bonus. And both even former Eagles players have said, his departure was probably a big contributing factor to even their drop-off and their struggle. And we saw what the Ravens defense did this year. It's not just all Mike Macdonald. There are different pieces involved. So for that one, I'm curious where we land, man. I'd still love for, a Bill Belichick to humble himself, which he's not going to do, or a Mike Vrabel to say, hey, maybe if I just take a DC spot, get myself back in the coaching cycle instead of sitting out for a year, because there's really not much going on with Mike Vrabel either. I've heard nothing about him going to any other head coach interviews that are really happening. So is he really going to sit out for a year? I don't know how that plays on his part. Was he really that good enough where he can sit out for a year and then come right back in as a head coach? I don't know.
Yeah, those are all great points too. And like I said, the whole sort of situation surrounding this defensive coordinator search and I guess how the Ravens secondary ranked when talking about Denard Wilson. Sixth overall in terms of pass yards against opposing offenses and tied for second best in terms of touchdowns given to the air or touchdowns allowed through the air. Only tied with the Buffalo Bills for second, but only ahead of them was surprisingly the Houston Texans. So absolutely great production out of that secondary under Denard Wilson, and that would be an absolutely phenomenal hire. But there's so many other external factors at play here. Obviously, not only what the Ravens are doing, but externally with all these other teams. Chris, I'm going to move on to you here. What do you think about this defensive coordinator search? Where are your eyes sort of looking to right now? And where can you see the Giants sort of going here? Or I guess pivoting if the Denard Wilson sort of talks fall through?
Yeah, kind of similar to what Zain said. I because my first thought was, okay, if McDonald is going to go to Seattle, does he bring, Denard Wilson with him? This familiarity. He'd be a defensive coordinator, which he's interviewed with the Rams, the Titans, the Packers, the Giants twice alone. I also thought, okay, maybe does he get promoted as the Ravens defensive coordinator as well? Now, with that kind of being up in the air, and he definitely has a wide range of opportunities to choose from. I think now you kind of look at, Jerome Henderson. You can look at, the Miami Dolphins linebacker coach, Anthony, I always pronounce it wrong. I think it's Campanelli. Excuse me, my Italians. Let me know in the comments if I butcher that or not. You also have, the Kansas City Chiefs linebacker coach as well, Brendan Daly. Now that I believe you would have to actually wait until the Super Bowl is over if you wanted to proceed that way. But those are really the only candidates that the Giants have interviewed that are left in the group. So I wouldn't mind, Jerome Henderson getting his shot. We've seen the work that he's been able to put. I've said on this podcast before as well, I wouldn't even mind seeing maybe Andre Patterson, getting a little shot at it too. But my eyes were, really just sold on Denard Wilson. So, now with seeing how things are, I am really intrigued to see how do the Giants, pivot from this, because, you have a wrench thrown into your plans. Even though, again, he interviewed at other places, you could tell that this was, someone that the Giants were really, really interested in. I will say, I think this is good news for the Giants as well, because while it's not a guarantee, I do think that, this is a little bit more of a likelihood that Mike Kafka is going to stay with the New York Giants for his third year. Now, he can obviously go somewhere else, but I really don't think, at least head coaching wise, I don't think he gets the job with the Commanders whatsoever. So I think, that's good for the offense, keeping your OC under wraps for another year, 3 years under the same OC, that'll definitely be good for the offense. But defensively, they got to figure it out. They have to figure it out. I know if Aaron was here, he'd probably say Mike Vrabel. Excuse me.
Oh,
Mike,
yeah, he would.
But I don't think, similar to, Bill Belichick, I just don't see them, taking a lateral position. I think these guys, they have the cachet, especially Bill, to where he can, kind of pull a Sean Payton and wait a year, to, see how things are. And then the next year, test that out. But definitely interesting. Very interesting times for the Giants.
Yeah, that definitely is interesting. Rodney, I'm going to get to you here in just a second. But like Coach is saying here, make sure you guys are liking the stream, subscribing, all the phenomenal content creators here. We got a nice little panel here. We're missing Aaron. Also subscribe to That's My Sports. Don't miss out on what they're posting. But yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Coach. The support means a lot. And like I said, everybody's description and everybody's channels is in the description down below. I apologize. The stream is lagging a little bit on my end, but we're going to make do with what we have here as technology. It always seems to go funky at the wrong times. But Chris is also pointing out a couple names here. Bobby Babich has that sort of, I guess, continuity with Daboll's, what he's saying here in the chat. Lawrence Tynes apparently wants KC's DB coach, Dave Merritt, and Coach Ed pointing out the fact that Campanile, that's how I'm going to pronounce it until I get corrected otherwise, is a North Jersey high school legacy, was the Paramus Catholic, I I guess, coach when Rashawn Gary was there. So a lot of Jersey ties there for Mr. Campanile. Rodney, we're going to get to you. What do you think about this defensive coordinator search? And like I said, would you be open to seeing some internal promotions with a potential Jerome Henderson promotion if we can't find an external candidate? What do you think?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, case in point with Jerome Henderson and even with Andre Patterson, I mean, you have some sort of continuity there within, that defense room. Now, what type of scheme would they run? Would they piggyback off of what Wink was doing, since that's the most recent, and maybe they could get at least, I would say they probably wouldn't have to change much if they stuck with that. But again, we don't know whether or not they'll try to implement their own schemes. Denard Wilson, that's an interesting one to me because, as Zain said, and also Chris, whether or not he leaves with Mike McDonald to go to Seattle, he's got plenty of suitors, yes. And also, would it make sense for him to stay in Baltimore where he already knows the system, continue in that, with that regime? Or other than that, I mean, what else could they really offer? I mean, he's up for a DC position if that's the case, if they want to promote him in Baltimore. We're interviewing him for also a DC coordinator position. The question is, with all the hoopla and news and everything that's been going on with Brian Daboll, does he want to bring himself into that mix? That's a big question. That's for any DC outside of who we have already in-house. Do they want to come in to whatever they may think is going on with the New York Giants? That's a big question right there. A very, very big question. So you got to take all that into consideration as far as these DC hires, who it's going to be. As long as they can come in and pretty much piggyback on how good this defense, not to say they were like number one, but they showed a lot of promise as far as the strides that they took. Bobby Okereke, I'm going to go out there and say Isaiah Simmons, even though his snap share was a little, was not that much. Xavier McKinney, can he get whoever the DC is, can they utilize these guys, these pieces that they have, add to it, whether it be a free agency or the draft? Gets, again, it's a major thing as far as with me is continuity. Making sure that whoever comes in, whether it be outside or in, they can get along with Brian Daboll. That's the main thing for me. Can they get along with Brian Daboll? Can they take orders from Brian Daboll? Big question.
And that's something that we saw with Wink Martindale also in Baltimore with his fallout there. Like, that's not a new thing that we saw with Wink, and we've definitely discussed this before. So that's where I wanted to get your thoughts and opinions on this, Zain, with all this sort of, I guess, hoopla that Rodney's alluding to here in terms of, I guess, being sort of wary if you are looking to take this job with the New York Giants. Do you believe that there is, I guess, internal drama, I guess is the best word to call it? Do you believe in all of these different reports that we've been seeing that Brian Daboll was the, I guess, instigator in terms of the rift with Wink Martindale? Or do you think that that is all being misconstrued and misplayed? Because a lot of people have been talking about this on the timeline for quite some time. Listen, I don't know what's going on internally, and I guess this is all speculation and hearsay at the end of the day, but what is your take on how all of this sort of went down in terms of us needing to now go out there and find that defensive coordinator to replace Wink? What do you think, Zain?
Well, I think the way it went down was pretty ridiculous, just for the organization, right? It was like a clown show. It's like a little bit of an NFL soap opera for people. I mean, if I'm on the outside looking in, I'm making fun of you guys, right? Because grow up, right? Like, it was very, very childish. It was very high school immature type stuff. And we had both sides of it. Wink's side is, no, Daboll's an a-hole. He's a hothead. He's an absolute hothead. We can see that. And if he can't figure out to do the opposite of kind of what Tom Coughlin did, right? Tom Coughlin was no problem with coaches, executives, problem with the players. He seems to be a little bit the other way. No problem with the players, maybe problem with staff. So, I mean, that's something you could work on. That's really not that big of a deal. If people didn't want to work with Dayball, they wouldn't be interviewing people. They wouldn't be hiring people. They've already made 3 hires. If people didn't want to be here, they wouldn't be here. So I think that notion is a little bit worse for Wink, because from everything we've heard, he's had 1 interview and he got passed up on by somebody I've never heard of. So where the indictment really lies at this point, I would say, is a little bit more on Wink, because now this is the 2nd time he's left a job mutually because it quote unquote didn't work out. And this time it was pretty ugly. Now, if Wink's whole deal was accurate, that, hey, listen, I'm not firing my boys, if I go, they go, whatever, then that's on you, my guy. Like, if it's more, if that's a more value to you, the quote unquote loyalty and all that stuff, I get it, no problem. If you wanted to be out, be out. I don't want you here if you don't want to be here. So I'm perfectly fine with that. As far as Dable, yeah, he needs to calm down. He just needs to chill out. It's not that big of a deal. We've all had professional jobs, sports or not. You just can't go around F-bombing everybody. There's levels, there's seniority, there's protocols, there's hierarchies. There's a whole organizational chart, right? Even football works as there's an organizational chart. You wouldn't go out, like, Brian Dable's not screaming at John Mara. It ain't happening. He'll lose his job, right? We all know this. That's not going to happen. In the same way, I'm sorry, he is the head coach. So if you don't like it, you ain't got to be here. It's just one of those things where you got to ride or die with the situation. So if their personalities didn't work, good for them. For the most part, we even, heard Adoree come out and say, I had no idea. So they kept most of it behind closed doors. And again, the way it went, pretty ugly, pretty stupid. I'm glad it's over with. Let's move on from it. Good luck to everybody. But I don't think Dayball and me working with you or you working with me is that big of a problem, because you'd see a mass exodus. You'd see everybody out.
Yep. I agree with that. That's actually such a great point too. Like I said, it is both sides of the fence here that we're talking about, and Brian Daboll definitely does need to chill out at the end of the day, because like you said, that's a perfect way to put it. There is an organizational chart at the end of the day, and we need that. Like I said, I guess the best word is that continuity that Rodney was talking about amongst all of this coaching staff. But we'll continue to see how that affects, I guess, this organization moving forward. Dude, Chris, you got a whole fan base over here, man. The new name is Tough, the Giant Topic. We got G Nation in here saying, when are you gonna let me know that you're changed your channel name, bro? This is fire, bro. This is fire. They are rocking with you.
I appreciate that. I definitely got to make a video on YouTube because I kind of just been more on X than I have been on YouTube outside the live streams. But working out some some nicks and cracks that I got going, trying to get a little bit better at editing, so that I can put out better content. And I appreciate it, seriously, man. Thank you.
Definitely, most definitely. And I guess the last sort of topic that I wanted to, I guess, get on while we're talking about the defensive coordinators is the big impending free agent, and I should say free agents because we do have Chris K in the house, who is a big Isaiah Simmons fan, and we all know that he's a free agent as well. But a little bit bigger of a free agent, a bigger deal this offseason, especially about the free agent that we'll be talking about in the next slide. And yes, we will be getting into Malik Neighbors versus Rome Odunze here in just a bit, Jaden. Hold on to your hat there. That'll be the last topic of discussion. Xavier McKinney, impending free agent. We can't talk about defensive coordinators coming in without talking about the personnel that they're going to have to work with. Obviously, we see 2 defensive back coaches here up for consideration as the potential next defensive coordinator. Xavier McKinney, one of your star young defensive backs, is a free agent and is going to demand top of the line safety money because he did not miss a snap all of 2023, not one single one, and he balled out and had a great season. I guess the topic of conversation here, you have to take a look at it from a bigger picture and look at what the Giants are having to work with in terms of the salary, I guess, cap space, and also the fact that we also have to pay, or maybe not pay and pass up, our running back, who we'll be talking about here in just a second with Saquon Barkley, and giving our thoughts on that. Zain, Chris, Rodney, do we see X-Man coming back to this defense, or are we going to let him walk and try to see what we have with maybe a Dane Belton and Jason Pinnock and maybe a Javarius Owens stepping up, for those guys stepping in to fit that bill? Obviously, banking on a Dane Belton or Javarius Owens to come in and make that impact as big as Xavier McKinney has made his presence felt in this Giants secondary is going to be a tough task, and I'm not really confident in banking on that moving forward. But when you look at that money situation moving forward for the New York Giants, it gets kind of, I guess, sketchy, for lack of a better term, when sort of allocating that type of money out. So whoever wants to start off here first, feel free, because this is a big topic of discussion when talking about these defense moves.
I'll let our guest go first.
Zain, go ahead.
Just me. Okay. Xavier McKinnon's a real tough one, man. That's a really, really tough one because he hit a bunch of career highs because he played all the games, played all the stats. Statistically, it looks good. Eye test for me wasn't as great as the statistical year. I thought there were games where he just wasn't in the right spot at the right time. And I'm not going to argue with the PFF crowd. I don't live and die by PFF grades. I don't care for them. They're just another metric. There's like 20 of them out there. PFF, Pro Football Reference, Draft Network, everyone has like these metrics, and I just don't consider any of them gospels. They're just literally a metric. And he did play very, very well. It's not a knock on Xavier McKinney. But if he wants to be paid top 3, top 4, top 5, is he top 3, top 4, top 5? That's the question. I don't think he is. You could top 10, sure. I think you could probably put him between 7 and 10, depending on how much you love his game. I think that probably is a good place to put him, but I think he's going to want top 3 money. And where's that coming from exactly? I know there's going to be some cuts made, and we'll add a little bit. Unless we're looking at some restructures or extensions, it's not going to be as big of a cap this year. It'll be enough to make moves, but nothing splashy or really, really big. So I'd be very curious how it'd be structured, number one, if it was to. And again, I'll ask you guys, if he wants 15 or more, are you signing him? Forget the years for a second. If he wants 15 or more, are you signing him? And that's kind of where I think he's going to be. I want 15 or more. I think he probably wants 18 to 20. I think Antoine Winfield Jr. is going to reset the whole thing. He's probably going to get big dollars. His play was really, really well. He's probably going to get the big dollars. Xavier McKinney's going to want that same thing, but he'll be a notch below, in my opinion. But if, Antoine Winfield Jr. is hitting 20, 21, 22, he's going to want 17 to 18. And he's going to say, look, I don't miss football. Look, every snap, I'm here. That's worth something. Oh, look how many tackles I had. Look at my play, watch my film. And then they'll do their work for his narrative to, blow up his contract. Again, really, really good player. Borderline top 10 or top 10, depending on how you feel about him. I thought the whole defense last season started a little bit slowish. He definitely started slow. The DB started slow. The whole Trey Hawkins thing was a bad move. It didn't work. Obviously adds stress in other places. So again, very, very curious. Would I re-sign him? My answer about re-signing players is always on price point, right? If it's the right price point, yes. If it isn't, then no. You can't afford to keep paying guys, unfortunately. And you're going to have more guys coming up that you're going to have to pay, want to pay type scenario. Isaiah Simmons is probably going to be cheaper just because he doesn't play enough snaps to warrant like a really, really big contract. No one's going to go crazy off of that. I'd love to keep him. He's still more of a 3-4 guy, like everybody's already said. I'd prefer, if we want to do the whole continuity thing, the major question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to move Dexter Lawrence out of position? Are you going to move him from, the nose tackle zero technique? Because if you do, he's a different player. Remember, his ascension took place when he got moved to this position. Until then, first 2-3 years, who's talking about Dexter Lawrence? We're not. The last, that move change was a big one. So unless the DC is going to come in, move him to, again, a lot of moving pieces. Going to be very curious how they want to run it. But gun to my head, for the money I believe Xavier McKinney wants, I do not believe he'll be back.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of great points there, man. I mean, and I agree with a lot of what you said, because for me, you really do have to ask yourself, like, financially, is it worth it? Right now, for me personally, I actually wouldn't mind giving Xavier McKinney that money, just due to the fact that I'm already thinking that, okay, 2 years from now, that DJ contract, damn near off the books at that point. And I'm hopeful that we'll have a rookie quarterback at that point, to where you're on a rookie contract. So, we can afford it, and then with the cap increasing, we can afford it. I do think Xavier McKinney is a dog. I know that people have their opinions about what happened in the middle of the year with Xavier McKinney coming out and voicing frustrations. That's all and fine. And, everyone is entitled to their opinion. Now, for me personally, I actually would not be surprised if that's a player that the Giants don't re-sign this year, just obviously due to the price point. But I think they want to get Dane Belton and crew, and I wouldn't be surprised if they addressed it in the draft too. But Dane Belton specifically, I mean, it seems like every time this kid is on the field, he is where the ball is at, at the right place at the right time, and same with Xavier McKinney. I feel personally, he tends to be where he should be. And you can make an argument that this year I thought it was a pretty okay year for Xavier. But the market is what the market is. And you still have to ask yourself, is this a player that you really want to invest in? Because you can use that money and prioritize other holes on your team, whether that's in the interior. We spoke about this on the last stream, we have a hole right now in the interior on defense as well. God forbid something happens to Dexter Lawrence. I feel, man, I mean, Lord help us. So, it's a question that Joe Schoen's going to have to ask themselves. I wouldn't be surprised as well if, Saquon walks and they decide to pay Xavier McKinney, because that's money that you're not going to have to prioritize to Saquon, and the money that, you were going to pay Xavier McKinney if you were to sign Saquon Barkley to a deal is now a little bit less because you got a little bit extra pocket change with Saquon not being on the roster. So, definitely an interesting predicament for the Giants to be in. And I think wherever Xavier McKinney goes, I think teams will be happy with the product that they receive. Maybe the Raiders team up again with Patrick Graham. I don't know.
I guess before I let Rodney go here, I want to interject and just, I guess, sort of like throw this point out there to the group as well before we switch topics here after Rodney goes, is that also going into this fact of having a guy of Xavier McKinney's caliber, right, hitting the free agent market, and same goes for Saquon Barkley as well, is where does this regime honestly, realistically grade themselves in terms of how far off they are from being contenders, right? Because I think we took a little bit of a step back from last year by default, although we all knew that this team wasn't supposed to be contenders, not last year, not this year, and probably not even next year, right? Let's be honest with you. So how far off is this team from being contenders, and how far off does Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll think this team is? Because that's going to have a heavy influence as well with the multitude of holes this roster has. We went over our top 3 giant questions for this Giants team to address, and we pretty much hit on a lot of position groups. You said the interior, right? We have multiple free agents, wide receiver, who's going to be that wide receiver 1, right? Jalen Hyatt, don't think he's going to take that step in year 2 just yet. Who's going to be the wide receiver 1? We got a lot of questions on this team, right? So how far off are we? And I just wanted to sort of interject and throw that point out because, like I said, this is a very interesting time period. Most fans were like, after one playoff win back in 2022, we're like, all right, we're taking that next step. We're taking that next step. Maybe we'll get back to that same spot. Maybe we'll do a little bit better. But the expectations were higher than they were in that season. And coming off of what? I mean, a debacle of a season here for all intents and purposes, does that put the reset button on where this team should have been at when they were looking at this longevity from that playoff win? That's what I want to know. And I mean, I guess we can't answer that here fully. Definitely want to hear your opinions, but only the front office knows that sort of answer. But I just want to interject because I think that this all has a sort of it's an overarching cloud in terms of when we think about these offseason moves that we're going to be seeing here over the course of the next couple months in terms of paying these free agents the big money that they presumably want. Is how far off really are we? Rodney, Xavier McKinney, thoughts on him before we move on to Saquon Barkley?
No, I gotta honestly say, CP, you're not wrong at all. If you look at it, everything is included in the overall scheme of things. That cloud of the big question marks that we have as far as where this team is concerned and where Daboll and Schoen see this team. Okay, are we going through a true rebuild, or are we we're building to compete? That's the question you have to ask. Whereas Xavier McKinney is concerned, where he factors in with all that, in my mind, we should bring him back, but I believe the price point is going to be too high. You want to be able to keep the guys you draft. He knows, I mean, he's been here, 4 or 5 years now? I think he was in the 2020 draft.
4.
the
He
Z's
was a
number.
second rounder, so 4 years.
Yeah, all right. So, which scheme do you guys think he really thrived in? Just think about that for a second. He thrived really well in Patrick Graham's system. They used him differently in Wink Martin's system. He was more of an in-box safety. I don't know if you guys can remember. Joe Shane said that he prioritizes money as far as where he wants to allot it to premium positions. Running back and safety, unfortunately, are not those premium positions. Sorry to say that. So as much as we may want McKinney back, as much as we may think, you know what, he's a good building piece along with Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau. I would even go out on a limb and say Bobby Okereke and also Deonte Banks. Is he a good building block? Is that someone you can build a defense around, build a defense, build a team around? If you consider him to be that, then you pay him. You got no choice at this point. But do they value his position to give him that money? That's the big question. Do they value him in that position? Whatever DC comes in here, whether it be someone from outside or even the guys inside, the question that they're going to ask themselves as well, do you go and you put up what, 16, 17 mil if that's what he's going to ask for, possibly resetting that safety market? Or do you go ahead and see what Dane Belton has to offer? Remember now, Isaiah Simmons has played safety position. He's played pretty much all over the defense. So in that sense, what are you really giving up? You're giving up Xavier McKinney, yes. Dane Belton came on strong the last few games of the season. And you have Isaiah Simmons, although he says he doesn't want to play safety, he has, experience playing at that position. So whatever DC comes in, that's the question that they're going to have. Whatever, as far as Joe Shane and Dable, as far as how they view this roster, the bigger question outside of Xavier McKinney, and I would even say Isaiah Simmons and even Saquon Barkley, where do you see this team at as of right now? As you say, that big cloud, are we rebuilding or are we building to compete? That's a big question right there.
I feel like you gotta do this rebuild correct, man. I mean, we really haven't done this rebuild correctly, and I mean, Joe Shane even said, with the success that we had, and I'm just roughly quoting this. I mean, we could pull up the actual quote, but with the success that it had, it definitely sped things up a little bit. And now with how this year was, I do feel like it was a little bit of a reality check. I was definitely one of those people thinking the Giants could get double-digit wins, and I ate a little bit of humble pie this year. I think a lot of people did. But you really do have to look at yourself in the mirror. With jobs potentially being on the line if things go south here. You have a 7th overall pick in Evan Neal, who, if he doesn't take a step forward, that's very damning on the general manager, considering that that's a premium position in my eyes. Whether it's left tackle, right tackle, it's protecting your moneymaker, and that's your quarterback. So, I think it's a very important year for this organization to really figure out where they are currently. I would say, for me personally, I don't even want to call it rebuilding. I would say more of like a retooling. Obviously, y'all know how I feel about the quarterback position, but there's definitely talent on this team. It's not like what I think of with like the Carolina Panthers, or you look at even like the New England Patriots, where they're really devoid of talent. There's some talent there, but not really. I think that there is talent on both sides of the ball. And I think, whether you get yourself some interior pieces, address that quarterback position, and obviously we have to hope that this offensive line takes place and gets better going forward. But I think there are pieces to build around on this team currently.
Yeah, No, absolutely agree with you. And speaking of both sides of the ball, we've been on here for about 35 minutes. Like I said, like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the live chat. Drop your thoughts and opinions down below in the live chat. But let's get into the bread and butter of why we're here. Because Zain, man, I gotta hand it to you. You posed the question of, I guess, the entire offseason, which is, what is Saquon Barkley's value moving ahead into this offseason? And with what we saw this past season, like you see here, go follow Zain on X if you don't. Great polls, great content, great discussion overall. Did Saquon increase or decrease his value with this past season's production? And you see the final vote came in, over 400 votes on this topic, and the predominant majority of the fan base that voted said that he decreased his value. Now, when I first commented on this, I was taken aback a little bit by how good of a question this really was. And I really had to sit there and think, but being that I was a little bit in a rush, I needed to give my thoughts and opinions overall. And I was like, you know what? I think he increased his value, all things considered, with those outside factors that I said in my reply. And I still do think that, and I still won't stray away from that, but I could understand the other side of the fence. And like I said, I think that when we're having this debate, and this is going to be very fun, about whether he increased or decreased that value, there's a lot of things. It gets into like headache territory about what we have to consider with Saquon Barkley. Not only the type of player that he is and what he's been able to produce by himself in terms of games played and staying on the field, but also the lackluster of just talent straight up surrounding him throughout his time with the Giants. So Zain, being that it is your poll, you were the genius behind this poll. I got to hand it to you. This is, like I said, if I had to pick one topic of discussion that we can go back and forth and make a 3-hour show on, it probably would be this discussion. I'm going to hand this off to you, and I'm going to let you spit a little bit about your truth about this side of the fence that you're on, because I know what you're going to say. I know which side of the fence you're already on, but I'm very curious in terms of
course.
So go ahead.
So the fun thing about these polls and the options you give are answers or available answers. They're supposed to be gun to your head scenarios, right? You're not supposed to sit on the fence, because a lot of the replies will be, well, yeah, this, but yeah, this, because we're starting to now add context. But you do a loaded question like this on purpose, just to get what people's perception is, right? So 3 out of every 10 people say his value increased. But like you said, what does value mean? What am I even talking about? Am I talking about touchdowns, rushing yards, availability, snaps played, off the field? What was his character like? Philanthropies, what am I talking about? How you represent yourself? Because that is all part of your value. So in my opinion, the 30% are probably adding all those things that are non-football as part of his value. Because look at the way he fought through the season knowing the O-line was garbage and it was just him versus everybody. Look at how he never complains about anything. Look how he keeps getting hurt for us. He's doing it for us. So I get all that, no problem. Now let's step into reality a little bit. Ain't no way in hell you get a year older, get hurt, and increase your value. That's not a thing, all right? Because we're talking about production here. You're getting ready to pay the man, and you're not paying him because you're a good guy. We've gotten too many of these, you're a good guy, the Giants way, just to pay you because you're just a nice guy. So we just got to pay you because that's who we are. Why are we that? Why can't we just be good business people? I can still pay you your value and maybe, still treat you like a good person because you're a good person. You can continue to get, your sponsorships and all this other, social media charity that you get, right? All the views, all that from everything you're doing, because the charity work you're doing here in this market, you're not going to get in another market. You're not going to get the same opportunities that you're going to get in New York, New Jersey. There's a media market here. There's opportunities. It's not a knock on every state, every team, but I think for the most part, that's something everyone can understand. So to me, look at the stats, right? Less rushing yards, bad average, 10 total touchdowns, cool, the same. But guess what? He had the most receiving touchdowns he's ever had in his career. And then 2 out of his 4 rushing touchdowns happened in the last game, right? They were in the last game. So again, you're going to skew some of these things a little bit. It's not a knock on Saquon. I love Saquon, want Saquon here for life. It's not happening, right? His body's breaking down a little bit, as naturally it should be. He lost that burst, right? We've seen him have plays where you can go to the house, but he can't go to the house anymore, and that's okay. That's natural. This isn't 4 or 5 years ago. His body's beat up a little bit. So while I love Saquon, his value is added a little bit with, again, the off the field. The character is great. That stuff does matter in New York. Like, imagine bringing a personality like think of whoever you could think of, and then putting them in this market. That personality isn't gonna make it, right? A Peyton Manning couldn't do it here. I'm 100% on that. His personality wouldn't allow him to be able to maneuver the way he did. You can't operate with that kind of a personality here because he would put too much out there, right? He'd put too much out there, that would probably backfire. So personality-wise, you do need a certain type of character to be able to deal with media, region, all that good stuff. So for the main question about his value, you can't add mileage and appreciate. That's not how it works. This is no different than a car. Like, it does not appreciate here. Unfortunately, his value did decrease as far as I'm concerned. But for everyone saying the other pieces, yeah, I get it. I'm still not paying him for those other pieces. Like, that's just the hand you're dealt. You did the best you could. Cool. I can't give you an extra $4 to $6 million. They don't value running back, like Rodney said, right? Premium position, running back is not it. We have rumors of last year he rejected 13 to 14. Well, what kind of player says, I want this much money, and you counter lower and lower, and he's going to say, yep, sign me up. Sign me up, buddy. That's what I'm looking for, less money. So if that's his goal here, I tweeted this a while ago. I think he wants Jonathan Taylor money. Now, the precedent that Jim Irsay set is not a good one. This one works completely in Saquon's favor. Jonathan Taylor signed his extension coming off of a hurt year while being hurt this year, and he got paid good money. That's now a precedent where Saquon turns around and goes, he was hurt. What are you talking about? They paid him. They love him. They respect him. Not me. I didn't do it. I didn't do it for you. Okay. I'm taking my talents to South Beach, right? I'm out. I'm going to do a little show, but I'm gone. So I understand him too, right? We're talking about business at this point. So the Giants people, fans, take the person stuff out of it. Take the emotion out of it. Just look at it realistically. For a team that's thinking about what to do with its money, and there's a hole at cornerback 2 because you don't know, an edge number 2 because you don't know, and is Micah McFadden the guy, and what's the depth behind him because you don't know, and what's about to happen to Xavier McKinney because you don't know, and what about all those one-year DTs that are now gone, and Aziz hasn't been where he's been. You have all these other holes. There's no wide receiver 1. What's behind Darren Waller when he gets hurt? Are they going to finally let Bellinger? There's so many questions here. That's so hard to say. 15 million here. You got it. It's so hard. And again, not personal. Would love Saquon back. I don't think it's happening, man. I think there's 3 scenarios, right? They tag him. He's very, very upset. This is the one I don't want. He's going to play on the tag. It's not going to be good for the locker room because he's being very honest about who he's going to be going forward. He's been very forthright about his feelings. So that's the worst one. Best case scenario, in my opinion, is tag and trade. Everybody wins. He tags, we deal with the team, you get him, we get some compensation, everybody wins, right? Everybody gets something out of it. And otherwise, he just walks in. If you get a comp pick, you get a comp pick. You won't, though. You'll offset it with another contract of something. So that's probably best case. But yeah, I don't see him being here, man. It doesn't make sense in any form other than, yeah, I know we need playmakers, but what's the point of having one playmaker when everybody can just zoom in on one playmaker?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And also so Chris, sorry to cut you off here. I just want to throw this back in here too, because looking at this contract in terms of what he is demanding, and like you said, he's been very honest about the way he's going to approach this if he's tagged, and if the Giants try to play hardball with him another time, is obviously you have the 2 contracts. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor. That's a little bit more comparable, but also all these running backs around the league, not only Saquon Barkley, but everybody aspires to be and get that money that Christian McCaffrey got, right? And you look at that contract that Christian McCaffrey got in 2022, I believe is at the beginning of 2022, when he was still with the Panthers. He was coming off of 2 seasons that he played in, 3 games in 2020, 2021, and then 7 games the year in 2021, 2022. So I guess, it makes sense where all these running backs, well, he got it coming off of 10 games combined over the last 2 years before he got his mega deal as a running back. Why can't I get it? And Saquon's out here playing 16 games and then 14 games. So like I said, these contracts do shift. It is not a one-case-all scenario, but that is interesting to look at in terms of what Christian McCaffrey got versus the actual production that he actually, I guess, spat out over the course of the last 2 years before that contract was signed. But no, absolutely. And that tag and trade idea, for me, That is probably the best case scenario. Would you? I mean, I'm going to pose this to the chat right now, into the panel, and let me know what you guys think in the chat as you're watching this. Tag and trade to the Chicago Bears for the number 1 overall pick, a part of a package. What do you think? And
I
I'm
said
going
that
to
earlier
segue
too.
that.
If you want to move up that way, he absolutely should be. Yeah, he absolutely should be. I tweeted about that too. That listen, if that is a potential thing, he's one of the players that probably would be happier because they could pay him. You would still get something back in that while you can move up. And that's probably, again, best case scenario. Like, this is not a good relationship for either side. This is not about one side or the other. It's not like this has been great for Saquon. Like, I understand his loyalty. What have you gotten out of being here? As a player, like, what have you gotten out of it? Where's the success you've gotten except that one playoff run? You've gotten injuries. You've gotten money. You've definitely gotten the money just off your rookie contract alone. But if you want money, it just doesn't make sense here at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. We got Joseph here checking out the stream. Happy New Year. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining in. Chris, that's a perfect segue to you because I know you're all about that number 1 pick and your boy Caleb Williams. That's a topic of discussion for another day, obviously. But in terms of how it relates to Saquon Barkley, what you got for us, man?
Man, I am genuinely torn when it comes with Saquon Barkley because, you see how loyal he's been. You see, the just utmost professional player that I think, honestly, I've had probably since, y'all can tell me if I'm wrong. I think how he handles himself, how he handles the media, what he does for the community, I think we have not had that really since Eli, if I'm just being honest. And I like I said, I could be wrong, but for me personally, we had it. And as much as I would love to see Saquon Barkley back with the New York Giants, as much as I would love to see him finish his career with the New York Giants, I just don't see it. And it really pains me to say that, to be honest with you. But if you didn't give him a contract last year when he was a year younger, a year healthier, why would you give it to him now when he's a year older? And honestly, again, kind of similar with the Xavier McKinney situation. Do you prioritize that money to other positions of need? Because you guys said it, we have so many questions on this roster, edge, corner, possibly safety, the interior defensive line, interior offensive line, whether we want to really talk about it or not, right tackle with Evan Neal, obviously the quarterback position, and in my honest opinion, I mean, I think the money that they would, give Saquon, whether that's on a franchise tag or a multi-year deal, go out there and prioritize your other positions of need. I think this really does tie into, like I was saying earlier, man, you really have to look yourself in the mirror and say, does it make sense? And I just don't see how re-signing him outside of the argument of, well, he's, a stand-up guy, he's great for the team, he's great for the locker room. If you sign a rookie quarterback in the draft, that's a nice weapon. But like you said, Zain, which they've been doing this whole time, if you lock it on one player and shut him down, I mean, what do you have? And in my honest opinion, I just don't think that it would be – I don't think it would be in the best interest of Joe Schoen to bring back Saquon Barkley. And, while, again, the Giants did draft Eric Gray, and they could also, draft a running back this year in the draft, in my opinion, I don't think Saquon's a bad back. I still think he has a little bit of juice in the tank. Call up a team like Chicago, and see, I think Saquon Barkley and Justin Fields, that RPO would be nasty. Just being honest here. And I think that, Saquon Barkley's taken a step back and he's not the same person he was. And, he definitely can't hit that next gear like he used to, but I think there's some value in it. I just think that right now at both, from both standpoints and looking at both perspectives, it's best for both teams to just go their separate ways at this point. I mean, loyalty is only going to get you so far in this business because this is a business at the end of the day. Yeah. Yeah. Because I was on a plank where I really had the mindset of, I feel like because he really wants to finish his career here, he would take a garbage contract from the New York Giants. But at the same time, now with how he's been handling himself and being very honest going forward, I don't see that happening.
So let me ask you guys a quick question. If I could ask you a question, right? CBS reported that last year's offer to him, forget the annual, was it 13, 14, 12, whatever, the guaranteed money offered in the last contract, whatever the extension was, 19.5 million guaranteed, less than 2 franchise tags together, right? 19.5. If you're Joe Shane, what has occurred from last year to this year for you to raise that guaranteed money from 19.5? That's question one. My answer is nothing. And if I'm Saquon Barkley and I said no to 19.5 before, why am I saying it yes today? Who's going to settle here? Neither of them really should, because I know one team only has to do it. One team that can use Barkley more will say, I'll give you more than 19.5. And that will really be the end of it, in my opinion.
It's a great point too, and like you said, and like we've been talking about here with the Chicago Bears, like they have the capability to blow that right off, like off the door. To be honest with you, with
a couple teams do. I mean, you could, it can go crazy, and the Washington Commanders can say, "Look, we have all this money. They took Landon Collins. They paid him when nobody wanted to pay him. Paid him big top money, coming off a really, really good year." So, I mean, again, new regime, new everything. I don't know how Adam Peters worked, but he's part of the deal that brought in CMC as well. So, in that case, don't sleep on any team that has money that's willing to allocate, just a little bit more. If we're willing to go 10 and he needs 13, somebody who has money is going to go to 13. The extra $3 million is not going to make that much of a difference to a different team.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think, you could even say that maybe he even increased his value, but just not to the New York Giants. There are other teams, in the league that they need a back. I mean, I would not like to see this in any universe, but, you look at a team like Dallas, who, they thought that Tony Pollard was going to be their RB1. He sure as hell is not that. He's not. And, the reason why I mentioned Dallas was because, I follow a couple Dallas people on X, and there was a quote that's been really circulating, obviously with the Dallas camp, that Jerry says, this is the year where I have no problem fully buying in. And we know that Jerry's a spender, and they have contracts they have to figure out with CD and Micah and Dak. But I mean, just thinking of that offensive line, thinking of that run game that they have with Tony Pollard, you insert Saquon Barkley, that could be something that they may view as, okay, this can take us over that hump. So I feel like, Saquon, he might have increased, his value, but just not to the New York Giants.
Yep, and you're 100% right. What about another young team with a rookie quarterback that just went to the playoffs that could use a weapon? Houston Texans. They would like another weapon to add to CJ Stroud to make his life a little bit better. And they have the money on a rookie scale where, I can pay the $3 million you're not willing to pay.
And to that point as well, it's like you might as well get some trade value back for him. So these teams will want to actually, like, if we're talking about teams valuing him and needing that sort of, stud right there with the positions they're in, you might as well just do the tag and trade and get something back in return. So
the Giants are going to franchise him no matter what. I'm almost 100% sure of that, right? 99. I think it's going to happen no matter what, just to let people know, hey, we're trying to keep him. We're negotiating with him. He's not a free agent. And Barkley's not going to be happy, and they're not going to be happy. They're going to talk for a little bit. Unless John Mara says, hey, pay him, they're not going to come to terms, and that's where I think a tag and trade comes into play before, we'll just let you be a free agent.
Great point. I absolutely agree with that. Rodney, what you got in the Saquon situation as it pertains to this poll as well, because this is a great poll in terms of the 2023 numbers.
Do I think he decreases value? I'll be perfectly honest with you. I really don't know. And here's the reason why I say that. So we all know what Saquon Barkley brings to the table as far as his impact on the offense. Now, it hasn't been like his 2018 season, his rookie season. It hasn't been that. And we can sit there and we can point out to all the reasons why it isn't. His injuries, offensive line, Jason Garrett and that horrible play calling. You can bring up numerous reasons as to, and also his age. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. You can bring up a number of reasons as to why he shouldn't come back. We shouldn't sign him, whatever the case may be. For me, the way I look at it, what does he bring to any team that's going to sign him? What does Saquon Barkley bring? He's not CMC. Okay, we can all pretty much agree he's not CMC. But he offers any team he offers them something in the fact that something in the state of this running back, we know how dynamic he is. We've seen exactly what teams have done when the Giants offense hasn't been in a groove. Daniel Jones is not really throwing the ball well. Offensive line doesn't block. No drop back pass game. Can't pick up a stunt, blitz, whatever. But Saquon Barkley, we have to literally play, they did that last season. They did that more this season. Book is out on Daniel Jones, whatever the case may be. Book is out on our offensive line. Everybody knows that. But the only weapon that you really have to worry about for the last few years, outside of maybe, and I say this sparingly, Darius Slayton, was Saquon Barkley. As you guys said, there's going to be a lot of teams that are literally going to be willing to trade for him. I can see him going to Chicago, and as you said, Zain, I can definitely see him going to Houston. Definitely.
There's a quarterback who couldn't do anything just recently that could have loved to have Saquon when Odell wasn't getting it, when Flowers wasn't getting it. Lamar Jackson would have loved to be able to just kind of dump it out and get the offense going, right? He can at least get your offense going if nothing's happening. Just for the Giants, there's really nothing else for us to be happening. Where for like another team, as Rodney said, right? Houston, Dallas, Baltimore, there's all these places. There's at least 3 to 5 teams that are going to be like, I can use him better than you're using him because my team's better.
Exactly. I mean, and don't forget, you got Buffalo there too. And there was some, I don't know whether it was an X rumor or, actual media rumor going around about possibly trading Barkley to Buffalo. Well, I mean, it is what it is. They do need a running back. They're not especially dynamic or offense per se, except for when you got Josh Allen running the ball. But other than that, I mean, again, there's a lot of teams that's willing to pay Saquon Barkley. I think he should stay as long as the money is right. I think there's a possibility he would stay. And the reason why I say that is if the Xavier McKinney negotiation talks break down and he goes to seek that money elsewhere, possibility that they bring back Saquon Barkley. He knows the system. He's a quarterback's best friend. And in this sense, he's Daniel Jones' best friend. Because it's let's be fair. If Daniel Jones ain't really making the offense run, at least Saquon Barkley adds a little bit to that. A little bit. I was looking at Jonathan Taylor's contract. 3 years, $42 million, with $26.5 million guaranteed.
Not doing it.
My thing was, what exactly was it? I mean, I heard that they offered 12.5 at the bye week. I heard they offered 13.5 at the end of the season. It got up to the point of 14 somewhere in those contract talks this past offseason. So if he got 3 years, $42 million, $26.5 million guaranteed, you're telling me that he couldn't have taken that? And as you said, Zain, it was $19.5 million guaranteed. So that's 2 franchise tags right there.
Well, it would have been less than, right? About $3 million less. I think it would have been like 22 for 2 years. I think last year was plans to be 12, so it was under the 2 franchises.
Exactly. If I'm Saquon Barkley and I know my worth and I'm betting on myself, which he did, I'm not taking that contract because I know my worth. However, do the Giants know your worth? Does any other team out there know your worth? Do they respect that enough to pay you what you believe you're worth? That's a question that that's going to be hard to answer, especially where we don't know where things are going, where Barkley is concerned. So I'll end it like this. Would I like to see him back? Yes. At the right price point. And I think that's key.
Yep.
You cannot, again, Joe Shane value, he does not put money towards positions that are not as of value. They're not premium positions. And running back is not a premium position. You see a lot of teams going to running back by committee. All right. And if that's the way to go, then you can only respect a team for the way they're building and that route that they're willing to take. A premier back outside of McCaffrey, who else really is there? Joe Mixon, I believe, is going to be a free agent this upcoming offseason. He's going to look to get paid. You got Josh Jacobs in Las Vegas. He's going to be looking to get paid. I believe Austin Eckler, he was on the franchise tag as well. He more than likely is going to be looking to get paid. So when it's all said and done at the end of the day, I would like to see Barkley back. I mean, when you think of the New York Giants, he is pretty much who you think of as of right now being a New York Giant. You don't think of Daniel Jones or pretty much anybody else outside of maybe Kayvon Thibodeau, and that's only because he was a high draft pick. Dexter Lawrence because of just how good he's been playing. But the face of the Giants has been Saquon Barkley. So I'm not saying they should pay him just because of that. He's the face. I think that they should prioritize what they need to prioritize to get this team in, whether it's a retooling, as Chris said, or rebuild. They need to prioritize that over Saquon Barkley as much as I would like to see him back. And I think that's most important.
Yeah, and I think it's something to the point of the conversation, just to wrap this Saquon Barkley talk up, is that obviously we're not trying to diminish by no means like his value, right? Like he has earned this bag that he's going to get, whether it's with the Giants or inevitably with somebody else. It's just looking at the fit of this New York Giants team, and it comes back to that whole crowd, the whole cloud, that umbrella that it's overshadowing where this GM right now and Joe Shane is evaluating this Giants team at. And it's just a chess game right now, as it correlates to that sort of cap space that the Giants have to work with moving forward. So, and also you have coupled the fact that Saquon Barkley is taking to social media now, I guess, laughing at Cole Beasley, alluding to him going to the Cowboys. So that's never a good sign either. So imagine the sort of PR or media nightmare that would be if he actually does go to Dallas. But nonetheless, moving on to the last topic.
I hope they give him a ton of money and just hamstring themselves at the end of the day. Like do another Elliott part 2. At the end of the day, listen, I want every athlete to get paid. Go get paid, get your money, right? And the old adage is, if you want a puppy, you ask for a pony, right? Ask for something ridiculous, and you'll eventually settle on what you're looking for. So if he wants 14, he's got to ask for 20, and people are going to look at him stupid. But the reason you're starting high is so you can meet closer to the number you really want to get, which is what everyone does, right? I want my employer to give me more money. They're not going to do it. Doesn't mean I don't want it.
Yeah, wouldn't we all? Absolutely. No, that's a great point too. And that agent for Saquon Barkley,
she's terrible.
Obviously, is me playing hardball. So.
Terrible. She's terrible. Yeah. She cost him so much money. I blame her 100%. I asked this question. I wondered, how involved was Saquon in this contract negotiation? And when I say involved, was how much was him and his agent going back and forth at? What do you think about this number? No, I need you to hit this number. Or I'm looking at it. How complicit was he, or how active was he? That's the thing I'm always curious about athletes. How involved are you in the numbers game here? So I'd be curious how much he was, no, I need to do this, or, hey, listen, I'm hands off. You do your thing. I trust you. I'd be very curious if we'll ever find those kind of things out, because that's the real question.
Absolutely.
You know what, Zain? You're absolutely right.
The real question is, who cost us that deal? Is it me? Is it you? Or was it us?
You are absolutely right. I asked that same question myself.
And we'll never get the answer. Really it's terrible, because it's going to be such a good answer to see, did you really shoot yourself in the foot? Because if you did, then just, man up and realize it's all right. It happens. We all make mistakes, right? They bet on Daniel Jones, and Joe Shane said this, right? We sped up the process. There was a bet there. We're betting on this, and that's why that bet had a 2-year out. because we're betting on it in the short term. Oops, that bet did not work out. That bet did not work out. You can name all the different factors, no problem. All those little bets didn't work out. The Evan Neal bet, the open up the playbook for Daniel Jones, I think he could take on do more bet. That was a flop. All those little pieces didn't work. So all those bets now you got to try to recoup. You're back in a recoup now. Now, are we going to go for broke? Or are we going to properly rebuild? We all properly want to. You don't want to go for broke here. So, don't sign a $30 million wide receiver. Don't give me Kenny Galladay 2.0. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. Definitely don't do that. And that it transitions us and segues us perfectly here to number 6. If the wide receiver's on their mind and they decide not to trade back and there's no QB available, if we are talking about the wide receiver and potentially getting that wide receiver 1, the 2 names here that presumably would be on the block, depending on what the Chargers do at the number 5 pick, is Malik Neighbors versus Rome Odunze. Gentlemen, like I said, this is going to be the last topic of conversation before we wrap things up tonight, going round robin in terms of giving our thoughts and opinions about this scenario. Obviously, all things considered, I think we could probably assume that if a QB that this front office likes is available, they will be going QB, which we'll be talking about in a future stream, a future episode. Same thing with maybe a trade back scenario. But if they do like either of these wide receivers, because this is assuming that Marvin Harrison's off the board, who would they go ahead and pull the trigger on in terms of drafting at number 6? Malik Neighbors, obviously, of LSU, or coming out of Washington, Mr. Rome Odunze. 2, I want to say different in terms of skill set, but 2 very different stature and bodied wide receivers. When you talk about a under 200, 6 foot flat Malik Neighbors versus a bigger 6'3", your more generic wide receiver, a lot more ability to catch those contested balls in terms of physicality, 6'3", 215, Rome Odunze. Zain, I'm going to start with you here in terms of these 2 wide receivers. Not sure how many, how much, I guess, film or any sort of scouting reports you've got to watch on these guys, but what is your overall reaction if the Giants are on the clock and both these guys are available? What is your preference here?
Sure. So I will say I will answer, and then, gentlemen, you will have to humbly excuse me. I do have to go, but I do want to answer this question as quickly as I can. Between the 2, gun to my head, I'm taking Odunze for 2 reasons. One, that's already been mentioned, size, speed, physicality. Not that Neighbors isn't, right? But one is just better at it than the other one. Odunze is a little bit more polished as well too, just a little bit, nothing crazy. Again, it's very marginal. Whatever it's a flavor scenario here. Which one do you like better? My only thing with Neighbors would be is that he played a lot more slot than he would project to play here. I would take the true outside guy on Odunze, throw Hyatt on the other side, depending on what happens with Slayton. And I got, Wandale, and I'm happy now. Like, I feel like with those pieces, I'm a little bit happier as far as what I'm going to target and how those different pieces mesh. So I take Odunze simply because of those 2 reasons. Otherwise, if you take either or, they automatically become wide receiver 1 for us anyway. So you really can't go wrong here. It all comes down to usage. I know, this regime likes multiple. They don't like the one guy to do just like the one thing, which might be a knock for Odunze for them. They might not just want the one guy who's just the outside guy. But who doesn't move outside guys inside all the time for mismatches? We've seen it happen to Randy Moss, Megatron, right? You do it with these guys regardless just to win matches. So they don't have to be a prototypical, move around constantly, but you can move them around, potentially put them in motion, and let them come out of the slot if needed. But I'd personally take Odunze.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate your time. I know you got to slide out of here. Before you get out of here, I appreciate your time. Obviously, we're running a little bit over right now. We're going to finish up here in just a second. Where can everyone find you? Where are you doing content, and where are you on predominantly right now?
Yeah. Just catch me on X. This is not Zain. YouTube is the Belt Guy. We're going to be ramping up some interviews, back up, talking football as everyone does. New season, off season. It's going to be a drag. Let's hope we're not talking about Saquon every day, every week, because it's killing me right now. And Xavier McKinney will also become that killing me topic until free. I'm just ready to get to the draft part at this point. Like all the in-between stuff, I'd like to get past now. I'm sure we're all kind of tired. So, but I mean, it's only February 1st. I'm actually looking forward to the combine. The combine will be fun, right? The combine will be a little bit interesting. Some new blood coming in. But yeah, you can catch me on Twitter. Everything is on my profile. This is not Zain. Make sure you follow these gentlemen. Interact with them. Great people, great content. Just give them views, give them interaction. They're easy to talk to. They're good guys.
I appreciate you, Zain. Thank you so much for stopping by, and definitely we'll be dropping everything in the description. So check Zain out on X and YouTube. I appreciate it. Thank you so much,
I appreciate
and
you. Happy week, great week, safe week.
definitely,
Of course.
absolutely,
All
you
right,
as
David.
well.
All right.
Gentlemen, before we get out of here as well, I want to get your guys' thoughts and opinions on Odunze versus Neighbors as well. Like I said, Zane's making some great points, and it was thoroughly awesome to get him on the channel to talk some ball. I know he's been a little bit busier recently. I know he's going to ramp up his YouTube stuff as well very shortly, like he said, predominantly on X right now, but does some great interviews and has some great interviews already on his platform on YouTube that you can go check out in the description down below. Rodney, going to start with you here in terms of these two guys of the wide receiver sort of realm here. We know that the Giants need a wide receiver one. Nobody on the roster right now is going to be that. Slayton is already maxed out on what he's going to potentially be, being a borderline 2, but definitely a wide receiver 3 on an elite team. You got Wan'Dale Robinson's not going to be big enough to be that wide receiver 1 in Jalen Hyatt in year 2. Coupled with the fact that he still needs to prove himself in the short running route abilities, Jalen Hyatt, that is, we do need a complete wide receiver 1 moving forward. Is that going to be addressed in the first round with these two guys or later on is anybody's guess. But for the hypothetical scenario that we have here, of these two guys, who would be your preference?
When you asked about a topic earlier, I should have said either offensive line or wide receiver 1 at 6, because there's so many ways that the Giants go at this point. They're at this position in the draft where it's like all the best players are going to be, well, all of the top ones are going to be gone, and then you're in this spot where you don't know whether or not you need to really trade up to get what you want or trade back to acquire more draft assets to get what you want. As far as Neighbors and Odunze, 6'3" for Odunze, 6 feet for Neighbors. I guess the question that anybody would have to ask themselves going in, if they're looking at this from a glass half full perspective, we need a wide receiver 1. What do you believe encompasses a wide receiver 1? Is it Tyreek Hill? Is it Jamar Chase? I keep forgetting the guy up in the
Justin
Stephon
Jefferson,
Diggs.
probably with the stature.
Justin Jefferson. There you go. You have to ask yourself that question. What do you consider as a wide receiver 1? Who fits that mold? And who fits that mold in this draft? For me, I want someone who's like Justin Jefferson, who can garner that attention from the secondary and also that defensive coordinator who is going to be on that field, or who's going to be sitting there having to account for this guy on the field. That's what I want. I think that's what the Giants need. You have Hyatt who could take the top off, and you got Wan'Dale who can function, in an intermediate, even going down the field as well. So when it's all said and done, you're not going to get rid of Darius Slayton. That's for sure. At least not right now. He's outside of Wan'Dale Robinson. He's pretty much your most consistent receiver. So, but again, he's not a number 1. So who are you? Again, the question that you have to ask yourself: what do I consider wide receiver 1? Does he fit any of these receivers inside? As far as Neighbors, do they fit that mold? As far as what you would want to see a wide receiver 1. In this case, I'm tending to probably go with Neighbors outside of Odunze, and here's my reason why. 6'3", 215. I don't want to sit there and say he is almost like he's another Kenny Galladay, and I don't want him to turn into that. I think Odunze can actually be so much better than Galladay. But anyway, if we go to the route of Neighbors, I don't think would be such a bad idea, to be honest with you. I don't see it. Either way you go, you're getting a wide receiver one. The question is, how is this offense going to function with everything that's going on? Question marks at quarterback. Whether or not you're going to be wasting this kid's first 2 years, as far as being in the league. That's the question. That you also have to ask yourself as well. So
Yeah.
for me, it's a toss up, but I would have to go neighbors. I would have to go neighbors on this.
Yeah,
It's a
and
tough one.
yeah. What are you saying?
No, worth noting before you go. I just want to let you know because I was looking at the heights while Rodney was speaking. I was looking at the heights of the Giants wide receivers. Darius Slayton 6'1", Jalen Hyatt 6'0", Wan'Dale Robinson probably not even 6 foot if I had to guess. So height is something that this Giants team is lacking. I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but something to consider. Chris, sorry for cutting you off. Go ahead.
No, don't apologize at all. I thought Rodney and Zayn both made some great points, and I'm gonna keep it short and sweet with y'all. I like Adunze, I like Neighbors, but guns in my head, me personally, I gotta take Neighbors. I think he's a guy that you could put in the slot. Obviously, Wandale's there, but you could put him on the outside. You could get him involved in the run game as well with these jet sweeps. I think he's a player that you get him in open space. I mean, I'm not saying he's Debo Samuel, but he's one of those players to me that he's hard to get down. The way that he balances himself off of taking hits. He's an impressive player. And I think if the Giants can't trade up to one, that right there, and the rest of the quarterbacks are taken, like Daniels and Drake May, then I think Malik Neighbors has to be the pick. I really do think that adding him into your offense with Brian Dable and you keeping Mike Rowe as well, we see what he's been able to do with these wide receivers. Yeah, I think that he'd be a nice addition to the offense. No shout out to Adunze, but I just think you look at the history of Dable and how he likes his wide receivers. This is a perfect fit.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. That was very well said. Like I said, this Giants offense needs that wide receiver one because Jalen Hyatt, obviously great in the long game. We'll see what we get out of quarterback. It hasn't connected with Daniel Jones or anybody else that played quarterback in terms of the production for Jalen Hyatt. We saw a couple of brilliant games, but it was very few and far between. And I think our most electric wide receiver, right, outside of Darius Slayton, because he's the vet, is the reemergence of Wan'Dale Robinson, who's going to be huge for this team moving forward. Not only in the passing game, but his dynamicness in terms of using him also in the backfield, maybe some jet sweeps are going to be absolutely crucial for this team. And that's something that the offensive coordinator, depending on what happens to Mike Kafka or whoever even is calling plays, whether it's Kafka or Dable, the age-old question is going to have a field day with in terms of utilizing Wan'Dale Robinson moving forward. But I think the consensus is that this team needs that wide receiver one. So we'll see what happens at 6 with who's off the board versus I guess who they like, right, in terms of trading back. We'll see what this front office does. But that's all we had for you all today. Honestly, I got to head out of here myself. I do have prior commitments, wanted to get this in. Always appreciate the chat. Always appreciate the panel. Thank you to Zain, first and foremost, our guest, reoccurring guest on the Feeling Blue podcast for stepping out. I definitely appreciate his time. His knowledge is immense. And getting his overall perspective on all these topics was definitely needed because he does some great stuff on both YouTube and X. But it's great to get him on here and talking some Giants football with us in the offseason. Shout out everyone in the chat, man.
Shout out
Lane, Coach, Lou, Tuto, Chris, bro, everybody that showed out. I appreciated Jaden. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm missing anybody. Ray Shaw, Hollywood Ray, appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning out. For tuning in, I should say. And thank you. Like I said, this would not be something that we're doing without your guys' support. So I definitely appreciate that. As always, spread the word about the Feeling Blue podcast. You know what to do. Hit that thumbs up on all streams. This is streaming not only to CP New York Sports, but the new rebrand, The Giant Topic. Chris,
Yes,
I'm going
sir.
to let you speak on a little bit about what you're doing. Rodney, same to you before we get out of here. What are you guys doing? Where can people find you? And like I said, in the description down below, everybody's channels, make sure you check us all out and subscribe to our respective channels. Fellas, last words, where can they find you? little bit more about the Giants here before we close out. And yeah, it's been a great stream.
Yeah, y'all can find me at The Giant Topic both on YouTube and on Twitter. One word on Twitter, obviously. But yeah, I'm feeling really excited about this season going forward. Whether that's we getting a generational, if you will, quarterback, or getting a solid wide receiver one, and just addressing multiple pieces on this roster that we need to. It's going to be a fun season. We're going to have a lot to talk about, whether that's on the Giant Topic or here on these streams with y'all. I appreciate every single one of you guys tuning in. We all do. And yeah, keep tuning in because we got a lot in store for y'all.
Facts. Rodney, what you got?
You can follow me on X, formerly Twitter, whatever you want to call it, the bird. NYG 4L_77. I am in the process right now of actually doing the same thing as the Giant Topic. Not whole retooling, but I will be having some content out. Me and the Giant Topic is going to be in discussion as far as one very, very important aspect of my channel, and it's going to pretty much be interviewing a lot of these other content creators and asking them questions. So be looking out for that soon. So
awesome. Like I said, you can find Rodney and Chris both on YouTube in the description down below. This has been the latest episode of the Feeling Blue podcast. We were missing Aaron today. We got Zain the Belt Guy to fill in. It was a great discussion. We talked about obviously Neighbors versus Dunze, the whole Saquon Barkley situation, as well as the defensive coordinator search. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Like I said, I appreciate it. Chris, thank you so much for the kind words. And with that, until the next time, probably see you all next week, barring anything unforeseen. We're out. Peace.
Peace.